And last thing that I'll say is the scientist with the McDreamy coiffed, zaddy. That man was beautiful. Absolutely was like, I am on your side. Absolutely. What do you need from me to do? Everybody shut up and listen to this man. He's trying to help you guys. And
Hello. Do you want to play a game?
What's your favorite scary movie?
Be afraid. Be very afraid. See dead people.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Here's Johnny.
The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you!
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
Welcome to Talking Horror with Jamie and Nikisha.
Hi, I'm Jamie.
And I'm Nikisha, and this is Talking Horror with Jamie.
And Nikisha.
Where we share our love for all things scary and talk horror through the lens of human behavior. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome.
Or should we say, da, 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 da. Yes. All of the sound effects, all of the things, which we'll go into that later because I did not realize that was the theme for this particular monster. Mm-hmm. But today, we're talking about the 2023 Japanese film, Godzilla Minus One. Ooh. Now, this film was directed, written, and had visual effects done by Takashi Yamazaki, and it is the 37th installment in the Godzilla chain.
That's wild.
37.
Wow.
And I think this is probably the first one I have watched all the way through.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. Very, very interesting. And this is the 33rd Godzilla film produced by Toho Studios. So lots to discuss, but heavy spoilers are ahead. So if you have not watched Godzilla Minus One, take the time, press pause, take the 2 hours to go on Netflix and watch it, and then come back and listen to us. See if you agree with what we have to say about it. And Jamie, please give us all of the trigger warnings.
Yes. If you don't like big kaiju creatures, this may be scary. And kaiju means like giant monster. So if you don't like big scary monsters, this might be scary. Also, this takes place at the end of World War II. So if war movies or themes around war is disturbing to you, then this also might not be the film for you. There's a lot of destruction taking place, like the aftermath of like bombings, references to like nuclear war, references to like post World War II, references to kamikaze pilots, which were like essentially suicide planes pilots. So a lot of disturbing references, again, like taking place during this time period. I don't know. I'll say minesweepers. Searching for naval mines and disposing of them. Which also nuclear testing.
True. Also, Godzilla doesn't fuck around. Godzilla immediately just like chomps on bitches.
Yeah, it is very, again, like a big monster attacking people and murdering a whole bunch of people. It's very disturbing.
Truly.
Explosions, nuclear explosions, a love story, perhaps.
Yes. You always got to have a love story in there. With all that gore, somebody's finding love in the midst of all the insides on the outside. So
yeah. And just like a lot of references to death, both that you see and both that you don't see. Child abandonment.
That's big. Yeah. So it is very, very heavy. So if this is not your vibe, then maybe this is not for you. But we watched it. We're going to discuss it. Before we get into that, producer Brian, please give us some words.
Sure. Here are some of my words. Hi, YouTube. We're on YouTube. You can check us out there if you're listening to us. If you're watching on YouTube and you wanted to like pop us on in the car, we are also wherever you get your podcasts. However, if you're on social media, we are also there at Talk Horror Pod. We are on TikTok, we are on Instagram, we are on Twitter. Find us on all those places at Talk Horror Pod. We have a delightful time on there as well.
Yes. Fun times. Well, I have to tell you guys before we get into this that I watched a couple of things. Maxine, of course, but we'll talk about that when we talk about that.
Yeah, okay.
But I am now in the mindset of watching holiday-themed horror movies.
Okay.
So I watched on this 4th of July a movie called Uncle Sam.
Yeah, I've seen Uncle Sam.
Oh goodness. It was a ride, an experience. But definitely just about somebody's Uncle Sam who was a veteran who passed on but also still lived on and came back and chopped up a bunch of people. So it was a good time. What did you think
you like
about
it,
Brian? I mean, I'm all for like kitschy, whatever type of horror movies, but this one was just a little bit too much for me. Maybe because it just leaned too much on the. I mean, it's the 4th of July, so of course it's going to lean into all the American, Yay America stuff. But maybe just because we're in the climate that we're in, I was like, okay, I'm kind of over this.
So, I really like Uncle Sam, and here's why. I mean, I don't love it. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But like, I went in thinking it was going to be some like schlocky 80s movie, and it is, even though it's early 90s. Like, it has the schlocky 80s vibes. But I was genuinely surprised at how anti-war the movie was. Like, and just like all of these women in this little kid's life is trying to protect him from the fact that his military uncle was a garbage person.
Yes.
And like, he's looking up to him. And then through the slasher element of this, like, the kid learns that like, jingoism and like the pure staunch patriotism is not necessarily what you think it is. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I think
agree.
the kid with telekinesis doesn't make any sense. I think that like some of the movie is just like all over the place.
Yes.
But like I think the story about a kid who looks up to his uncle who's in the military, thinks his mother is just like so out of it when they're actually protecting him. I was surprised at how much I liked what the movie was trying to say and do. But it's still like a schlocky, like early 90s, like, which actually feels like 80s movie. So, and like, I think what makes it crazy is like the kid, his friend, and
in the wheelchair,
in the wheelchair, and then there's the like old man who tries to help them too, right?
Yes.
Like it's just a weird freaking movie. But I was very surprised at how much I actually liked it. Somebody on our TikTok suggested that I watch it, and I did. And I did a review on it, and I was genuinely surprised at how much I actually enjoyed it when I really went in with wildly low expectations.
That's fair. I mean, of course, watching a movie called Uncle Sam and you see like the poster for it, you already kind of know what it's going to be.
Totally,
it's not going to be something that's going to revolutionize horror movies. But I do understand your point too. Of I think it just took a long time to get to the anti-war.
It does. It totally does.
So it takes you a second to get there. But I will say some of the kills were pretty fun, and him exploding in that house and. The flag, I think he like kills someone and then puts him up like on the mast over the flag and stuff. Like it's fun.
I'm so happy you watched that. What a weird one.
We'll say, anytime Shudder suggests, and I think it was Shudder because I follow them on Instagram, and of course for the 4th of July they had their posts, but they had it for Uncle Sam, and it's like, oh well, yeah, let me go and watch this. So we're going to keep in the Hollywood trend. But I also want to say thank you to you guys, because if you're watching on YouTube, hi YouTube, you can see my shirt that says Run, and it has Megan on it. And this is a birthday gift from Brian and Jamie.
Yay.
It's a really cool place that I did not know about until you guys sent it over to me. So
yeah, it's called Fright Rags. Not sponsored, but
we'd love to be.
We'd love to be sponsored by Fright Rags. Their shirts are great. And you got it like a day or two. Like they mailed it fast.
They mailed it so fast. Like Probably
Brian,
within 3 or 4 days we got it.
Shark Week shirts.
Oh, really?
Jaws, many Jaws shirts.
There's so many.
Interesting.
So many
All right,
Jaws
I'll have
shirts.
to hop on Fright Rags, not sponsored.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool.
Also, there was something dealing with Megan that y'all were gonna tell me, but wait to tell me.
Oh, yeah. So Jamie and I watch RuPaul's Drag Race. We love it. And on this season of All Stars, they always do a rusical. So it's a send up of musicals, which usually has a message, but the queens have to like act it and sing it and do everything. And they do, sometimes it's like a take on The Sound of Music, sometimes it's a take on like Hairspray and stuff like that. But for whatever reason, this year for All Stars, it was a take on horror movies like Rosemary's Baby and all that stuff. And then one of the contestants, Georges, did Megan, and it was truly spectacular. You have to watch it. You don't even have to watch the whole episode, but you can absolutely just watch the like rusical they do.
Well, I definitely saw a clip of it on Instagram and saw that there was someone dressed as Pennywise. I think Roxy or somebody said.
Yeah,
Roxy was
Andrews
Pennywise.
Which is the season that I have watched. Yes, and so it was so fun to see that. That's like the content like intermingling that I crave for. Like RuPaul's Drag Race and horror. Give it to me all day, every day.
More drag horror.
More drag. We need 80 million more slays. Like, and you don't even have to be creative. Slay 1, slay 2, slay 3. So like just all the way down the line. That's what I need in my life, and I'll be very happy.
Yeah, but give us the ultimate RuPaul universe, but like horror.
Absolutely.
Yeah, cross that over.
But crossover, yes. Fantastic. All right, are you ready to get into Godzilla Minus One?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yes, we need a plot summary, a 2-minute plot summary. So producer Brian is going to give that to us.
What's the plot?
All right, let's do this.
Yes. All right, producer Brian, there are 2 minutes on the clock. Are you ready to tell us everything you know about Godzilla Minus One?
Yes.
I will not subtract 1 minute off of the clock.
Thank you. That's great news.
All right. Ready, steady, go.
Okay, so there's a pilot called Shikishima. They are a kamikaze pilot at the end of World War II. They basically don't want to do it, so they fake a issue with the plane. They land on this little island, and while they're fixing a plane, Godzilla attacks, a small version of Godzilla. And he freezes up and can't shoot Godzilla, and it kills almost all of the men on the island. He ends up being sent home, and he has crazy PTSD from this. He gets back to Tokyo, which is in shambles after the war. He meets a woman named Noriko, who has basically adopted this baby who was given to her by dying family. And they kind of create their lives together. They're not together, but they are like in a family unit. Anyway, the pilot ends up getting a job cutting the mines from the water and blowing them up in the water. But what we learn is that because of the nuclear testing the Japanese were doing, this Godzilla creature kind of grew. And so Godzilla starts attacking boats and all of this. This is all in post-World War II, when the Japanese government was just like not for the people, totally out of sorts. So then Godzilla starts attacking, and they actually send one of their boats to investigate one of the Godzilla attacks. Godzilla starts attacking them, and then the military comes and Godzilla destroys their military. Anyway, they figure out Godzilla is coming to Tokyo, and it ends up killing Noriko when she gets a job, and then he decides that he's going to get revenge on Godzilla. The entire community of Tokyo comes together. They have this amazing plan to kill him. At the end of the day, it doesn't work, but the pilot comes in and is able to finally eject out of his plane. It blows up Godzilla's head. Godzilla sinks to the bottom of the water, and then he finds out that his Noriko, who he never got to fall in love with and tell her that like he loves her, is still alive. The whole family is reunited, but then Godzilla starts to regenerate.
And that's the plot.
Yes. So let's get into it in our first segment, likes and gripes.
And now our likes and gripes.
And my question to you guys, if you know, can you give me some background on the lore of Godzilla? Because I didn't realize there was the regenerative factor involved. Has that always been a thing?
I don't know Godzilla that well,
Okay.
to be totally
Great,
honest.
great,
I've
great, great.
seen a lot of the movies like when I was younger. But I'm sure that in some versions of it he can regenerate, maybe not. Maybe that was new for this movie. Like I don't
Yeah.
know. I do know yeah, so I'm not 100% sure. I could probably
Okay.
look it up right now, but
No, yeah, it's all good.
I'll do that. But I don't know the answer to that. Like I'm not familiar with the Godzilla lore, even though I've like seen the movies on like TMC and stuff like that growing up.
Oh, good old TCM. I miss that.
Yes.
So Jamie, do you want to start off with your likes and gripes?
Sure.
Yes.
I liked this movie a lot. I will also give it an asterisk that we watched this movie and had just come back from Pokemon Go Fest, and I
Fun.
am 8 months pregnant and was really sleepy, so I did fall asleep a teensy tiny bit while watching this, but it did not mean that I didn't enjoy this movie. It just meant
Yeah.
the overwhelming desire to fall asleep superseded my ability to remain awake for the entire film.
Listen, we
but
understand.
You only fell asleep during the like getting ready montage.
yeah, it was like when they were like prepping the plane, like
Yes.
before they had the conversation. It was like, yeah, it really was like the montage of like, let's do this, and
Right.
none of that is what they said or how it happened because I fell asleep. But if it
Yes.
did, then I assume that's what happened.
I mean, I think "let's do this" was the exact wording, so you're fine, Jamie. Yes.
But I did really enjoy this movie. I think I was putting it off like likely because of the content and just knowing that it was going to be like both really emotional and also like more realistic. And as I've said many times, I like escapism. I don't need to, live through
Yes.
reality. And even though they're like Godzilla is like a metaphor. What? Oh my god, shocking. No one's surprised by this, but that like it's still very much like just immediately taking place nearing the end of World War II and after, and like all of this tension around like historical context and politics. So but I knew that it was supposed to be so good, and so this was the perfect time to watch it. And I think that it's like it is really emotional. Like it's really intense. I cried. I cried a
Same.
lot, especially at the end. Just like I think that there's a lot of realism in terms of how people are reacting with one another, from like our protagonist who is seemingly avoiding his duties as a kamikaze pilot because he is afraid, and that's what lands him on Odo Island, and then like encountering Godzilla for the first time, and again not being able to act because of fear, and then surviving this like awful trauma, and like dealing with survivor's guilt. I thought that was really realistic. Like there's parts of it that I think are a little bit exaggerated for the purpose of a movie, but I do think that like we get a lot, like especially in the beginning, he's having nightmares about the trauma that he experienced. It's like really taking a toll on him, and he's really like he's making connections with people, but there's also this like standoffishness that he still is carrying with him. Like he can't fully let people in because of what he's experienced, and like the disappointment that I think he feels in himself, as well as like how other people viewed him for knowing that he was a kamikaze pilot and he returned back home. That like there's a lot of like negativity around the circumstances of him returning, regardless of what his like parents wanted for him, that it's like there was an expectation that this was your duty and you didn't do it. So I think that like he feels a lot of shame, he feels a lot of guilt, and he's very effectively conveying that. I I think that like his relationship over time with Noriko, as well as his, like, I'll say his daughter. I mean, that's essentially his daughter.
Yeah.
It's like a similar kind of thing where, like, you know, even like when every time she cries, it's like so heartbreaking. And it still is like she's having this like totally normal reaction to, like, there's always some weird standoffishness that he has even towards her. Like, he can't even fully like accept his role. Like, obviously he cares, but it's like, I can't fully let myself love this girl unconditionally. Like, there's just something that's like preventing him, and I think it's, you know, still part of like holding himself back, to the point where, like, then there are several conversations, most importantly the one that he has with Noriko, where it's like, you know, I experienced trauma too. Like I survived something horrific, but we have to live. Like that's our only option. And like, man, what an impactful conversation to have, because like I think that it's such a good like pair, like different experiences of like seeing somebody who like might be experiencing survivor's guilt, but also like feels so much of that like pressure to just continue on and like endure, and like that resilience is so powerful. And for a good chunk of the movie, he really struggled with that and like didn't believe that he could continue on in that way. Like he was like alive, but I think he felt more like a coward and was just like, you know, alive but didn't really deserve it. So getting to a place where he was really able to like acknowledge, okay, maybe I am allowed to do this. But yeah, I think just like the humanity of it all, this is probably one of the most like realistic movies that we've seen, where like it just feels like real genuine human people, not just like characters, and going through these like really intense experiences and like just feeling like these are lived real human beings. And I really appreciated that.
I was just going to piggyback off of that because I put the same thing of, I really enjoyed the narrative of this man, like trying to live by any means necessary, even if he was deemed a coward. And it was such a great build of him realizing like what he wants to live for and his purpose, as opposed to being like told all his life, either if it was by his parents of like, you wanted me to live like I lived, but you know, being a kamikaze pilot and what that entails, and him being told that that's what your legacy is to be this for your people. So I just really loved that, like you said, the humanity aspect of those two things.
And then like I also really liked when he first joins the minesweeper vessel. Like the first thing that I said to Brian was like, oh, this feels like Jaws. Like it's just like these like stereotypical like, here's your 3 different boat characters.
Oh yeah,
and, like
that was one of my likes for sure. And even like
it was so enjoyable,
very enjoyable. Even like them dropping the mines into Godzilla like felt like the yellow barrels in Jaws.
1,000%.
The way that the boat was being chased by it, like that whole like nautical section of the film, like brought me great joy. Not only because it was reminiscent of that, but because it was extraordinarily well made. And easy to follow in terms of like visually. I think this is a visually stunning movie, and and outside of it winning best special effects at the Oscars, like this movie cinematography wise, the way it's telling a story visually, because what we did was we turned off the American dub. We watched it in Japanese with the subtitles.
Yeah, that was like, that really threw me for, I was like, what's how, I don't like
right when it first started, I was like,
I was like, oh, I can't do this.
Nope.
The only movies I will watch dubbed are the Miyazaki animated films.
Okay. Yeah. No, it's so funny. It was, I was thinking to myself, like, I can't read this fast, but I have to hear the inflection
of
these people
100%
in this. Yeah. So I'm like, I would just I had to like press pause and go back 10 seconds and be like, okay, what did he say? Let me because it would go by so fast. I'm like, but you're experiencing the real raw emotion, which I think speaks to what Jamie was talking about of how realistic these characters were. And it only is emphasized when you're actually hearing them speaking their language doing this.
Yeah. Nothing to me is more distracting than a dub, especially perhaps if you're under the influence and starting to watch a horror movie and then all of a sudden you're laughing hysterically because you're like, this is not what should be happening.
This is not it. Yeah. It just takes you out of it.
Never happened before when Brian and I tried to watch Rec and literally couldn't find a single like original Spanish language with English subtitle version of it. Even through Amazon, it was only English. Like it took I think it took like a year and a half before we finally found it in Spanish proper.
Yeah.
Like it was unwatchable in the English dub.
No,
and,
unwatchable.
Like, fully had like a laughing hysteric breakdown because like
it
was
5 minutes in.
Yeah, it was,
and we had to
so
stop.
funny and I was like, I can't watch this. I'm not gonna make it through.
I feel like that was the same with what did we watch? Pan's Labyrinth? Because I couldn't find it.
Wait, really?
Was that it? Yeah, no. I think I
Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah, but I had to watch it in dub because I couldn't find.
That's
so weird. We found it. Where did we find it? Anyway, besides the point. Also, if I know that all of our listeners were hanging to wait, like just like freaking out about if Godzilla can regenerate, and Godzilla in 2 previous movies could regenerate, so that was like being pulled from that kind of stuff, like the Godzilla regeneration cells.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know it won for special effects, but my God, it fucking deserved it because how they built that monster, the spikes coming out of it and it like charging.
Were so cool. And just the head out of the water chasing the boat, I actually think that was the scariest.
Yes. Oh my God.
Absolutely.
I mean, that really felt like Jaws. It's just like, it's coming, it's like getting closer. It was really it's a terrifying image. I mean, when he first shows up in the very beginning of the movie and they're just like, what the fuck is going on? And they run and like try to hide and then they all freak out and he's like kind of looking around and then all of a sudden he attacks them and it's just like destruction. It's like it's very scary visuals, even though he's a creature with a very tiny head and a big body.
What I really liked about that first scene, since we're talking about it, is I think it's really does a really good job at setting up the characters very quickly, and then you get into
he shows up so fast. Godzilla,
that's what I was gonna say.
Came up so quickly. I was not expecting his introduction to like basically be in the first like 5 minutes of the movie.
Yeah. And when the first time he chomps someone and it's bloody and we're just like, oh my God, like I thought that set the tone perfectly. So like I knew what kind of Godzilla destruction this was going to be, and that allowed me to enjoy the human moments more because we don't see him for another while where we're dealing with the pilot in Japan. Knowing that the Godzilla scenes were going to be brutal, I liked the downtime we had with the characters. It was a really nice juxtaposition between the brutality of post-war Japan and like these people just trying to survive, like you all said earlier. I thought it was just like tone-wise, this movie was perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because I think... sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, like, from my understanding of this chain, it's one of the few movies that does kind of center around, like, how does a society deal with like such a huge tragic event and like focusing more on people's stories, which I do think is like really compelling. It's, you know, we get so many there's so many movies that we get that are like action oriented that don't really talk about like what are the consequences, like, you know, the whole superhero Marvel universe. Like we've gotten it sometimes in some of them, but like, or The Boys, like I think just like talking about how do you like incorporate reality with like fiction and fantasy, but like I think really showcasing real human reactions and like how would they troubleshoot this, how would they problem solve that, like there are like certain things that people can do, but it's like, as a larger society, how are we responding to this, and like, you know, the reality of that.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting because they're telling it, as an American watching this movie, they're telling it from the Japanese perspective. And obviously, we grew up learning the history of World War II and what the Japanese did and how they handled themselves and all of that. But watching this movie, I think it does a really good job of showing it from the community, like Jamie mentioned, from the everyday person's experience where they're trying to rebuild. And the marketing and propaganda that they have been presented with, and how they don't necessarily all agree with what had happened and what was going to happen, and that their government failed them, and that, like, there was that whole thing about, I mean, the point is that they had to come together as a community and society because the government wasn't going to do anything, so they needed to rebuild everything. And I thought that could have easily not been great, Bob. That could have been like, oh, this World War II, whatever there. But I thought that it was really interesting. I also thought it was interesting. I never really mentioned the atom bombs that were dropped on them, like, really. And I thought that was an interesting choice as well. Yeah, so I just wanted to point that out because I thought that was really interesting in terms of the tone aspect of this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They reference the bombing of Tokyo. They reference nuclear testing that the US is doing. And I think that they're implying that the nuclear testing is what, like, both contributed to Godzilla's, like, surfacing, and also I think that's where they, like, make the regeneration
stuff happen. Okay.
Yeah, because he's just
out
a
of the
regular,
nuclear
like,
testing.
crazy lizard monster at the beginning, and then
Yeah.
there's that shot of the testing, and then, like, they just show, like, the eye with all of the, like, nuclear fission around it and whatnot.
Jesus.
Yeah. But no, I think, like, something that we're talking about is just, like, not only the incredible visual effects, but just, like, man, this is, like, a scary monster. Like, this is, like, a really, like, devastating, terrifying monster. And every time he does, you know, make his appearance, even, like, when you see the fish, like, you know shit's gonna go down. It's like, it's already set this tone of, like, oh no, this is gonna be bad. And the scene where he attacks Ginza is, like, really scary.
Yeah.
Especially when Shikishima, what's his name? Shikishima, he finds Noriko, and then but right before he does his, like, nuclear attack, she pushes him out of the way. I think I, like, fully held my breath.
Yeah.
I just, like, I didn't know what to expect in that moment. And, like, just the, like, kind of implosion and then explosion thing that happens. And I will say the one thing that I, like, didn't totally believe was that, like, he was totally fine in that, like, slight alleyway, like, a foot into that alleyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I, that didn't really bother me in the moment. I was just like, where the fuck did Noriko go? What the fuck just happened? Like, where's everybody? Like, it was just so devastating.
And it was dead silent too, which I love, like, the sound effects in that too. And then you get, like, the rain of all the debris on him and him just like wailing. Such a great scene.
Yeah.
Really
I also
well done.
I think that they re-released this movie in a black and white version.
They did.
Where the only color is when Godzilla does his attacks.
Oh.
I think. Which
That's awesome.
is really interesting to me, of, like I feel like that I would potentially rewatch this movie in the black and white version, because I feel like all those scenes are just, like, so and, like, it's even though we watched the movie in color, it's still, like, that like nuclear, blue-green color is, like, so intense, and it's like, this means bad, this is no good. It still is, like, terrifying, and I'm sure just, like, the intensity of it in being in black and white is like even more
I
scary.
really want to watch the black and white version. I mean,
Yeah.
I enjoyed this movie a lot, and on second rewatch, I would 100% do it in the black and white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the last thing that I really enjoyed was just like the ending, because it made me cry. And I think, like, again, another moment where it's like this moment where he realizes he's ready to like take on the duty that he was so afraid to before. And like in that, the other survivor of the original attack, the engineer on Otho Island, is like, no, like you should live. Like you've been
Yes.
carrying this guilt. When he sees him that he's been carrying the photos of the family members of all the other engineers who died on Otho Island, he's like, you've been letting this hold you back this entire time. Like you haven't really lived. Like whatever anger and like stuff might have been there about his actions in the past, it's like you clearly have not allowed yourself to live freely this entire time.
Yeah.
And you deserve to live. Like live for those that are not able to live on. And and then like, you know, watching that last moment of him like getting ready to again like take on the original kamikaze duty, which I also have mixed feelings about. Like, are they glorifying that? I don't know if I care for that, but like him taking on that duty and then ejecting at the last second and revisiting that last scene where the engineer was like,
Here's the eject button.
This is the eject button. Like again, you should be able to let go of this guilt and live your life. That really made me sob.
You know what? And to speak on that, because when they do the first getting ready montage and he's telling them like, this is the lever that you pull for the bombs to, you know, ignite. At first I wanted in my heart of hearts for that to also be an eject thing.
Yeah. That's
so
what
I was really
thought.
hoping that by some miracle accident, like he thinks that he's doing this, but then he gets ejected. But it all still came to him choosing, you know, to eject himself and get out of the situation. But I really was like hoping that that would be the end of this, because it's already such like a pretty devastating movie. Just with in context alone, like aside from Godzilla, I mean that's the point of it, but just the where we are and the time period they set it in and everything is already just so devastating. So I was really happy to have that kind of happy ending. And I also want to say I didn't know that homegirl had Noriko had the little thing crawling up her neck at the end of that. I didn't notice that until I was going through Wikipedia to try to get ready for this, and I like read that in the plot, and I was like, wait a minute, and I had to go back and be like, oh my god, I totally missed that. I'm happy that I saw that again, but it was really wild. So it's like, okay, where are we going with this after? Like he regenerates himself, like where are we headed? I'm very excited to see what that next movie will be like.
Sure.
Yeah. I'm invested in like these characters and whatever they want to do. I really enjoyed this movie. Yeah.
Great. Producer Brian?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really take notes on this movie because we watched it before we knew we were doing this. But I really enjoyed the hell out of this. I just thought that everything about this movie was like dead on and great. The characters were fun. It was the perfect amount of melodramatic. Like these big emotions, these big sweeping declarations, like my war isn't over yet, and like things like that really worked.
Took my line, Brian.
Oh yeah. I like the idea. I thought the script was really smart in having him live what he wanted parallel to him having it. Like he was living the life of a father with a beautiful wife and like this like getting a job and rebuilding his world, but like he also wasn't in it because he like I thought that was a really clever device to use, where he's like a ghost in his own life. I thought that was really interesting. I loved all of the the stuff on the water, specifically when Godzilla's chasing them. I liked watching Godzilla destroy those tanks. No, excuse me, the Navy ships. I thought that was just amazing
Oh my God, when
stuff.
he just like chomped on them.
Yeah.
Oof.
I just thought all that was really, really great. The attacks. I thought that all of the community like coming together and them like talking about how they can defeat Godzilla with science and all of that stuff was great. Getting everybody together. It didn't feel like three guys in a room. Like it actually felt like, it had stakes to it. I thought all of that was really, really good. I liked all the montage stuff. I mean the whole end was very suspenseful. And I like that I also liked the neighbor ended up like after chastising him for coming back as a kamikaze pilot, really like was able to help them. Just like something neighbors say that affected him more than she cared about. Even though he basically gave her a purpose back as well by coming back with the girl because she had lost her family. So everyone's like giving and community building in this, and I really like that aspect of things. Even though some of it was like a little bit predictable, like when they're showing him the bomb button in the plane, and he's like, "Oh, let me show you one more thing," and then it cuts, and then the telegram comes to the house, and it's like this could be only one thing, but like it didn't matter because like all of this to me was just like it was all like a perfect ending in terms of like it was surprising yet inevitable. I really liked this movie a lot, and this movie is only okay if the special effects are this movie. Even though the human stories are great, this really hinges on the quality of the special effects because it could really pull. If Godzilla feels janky, then the other stuff grounding this in reality is kind of undercut in some ways. So the fact that Godzilla looks so real and like I believe the physics of it all like really helped this movie to like succeed.
Yeah. No, I agree, especially when he is attacking all of the buildings and just kind of turning around and his tail is hitting all the things.
Yeah.
It's just like, that's the physics of it all. Like you said, it makes it you're invested even more in it because it's believable in that sense.
Yeah, and also the last thing I'll say is of all the I just think this is such a good use of Godzilla as a symbol, representing like we talked about it already, but I just wanted to
it's a symbol?
It is. Like reiterating the point. I know we talked, but I want to just reiterate the point of like I just really enjoyed how this one head on dealt with what Godzilla meant to a post like Japan and what this like represented and how people's PTSD as well as anger at the government and the fallout from the nuclear like bombs and all of that, like it's just such a good way, an interesting way in this movie to convey all that with Godzilla as the centerpiece.
Yeah. No, it's great. I mean, I agree with everything that you guys have said about it. I did not expect to like this movie as much as I did because I'm not a monster horror person. But I was really invested in the characters. I thought the actors did a phenomenal job. Like we said, everything was so believable. I loved the little kid coming back and being like, "I'm coming to save your asses,"
Oh
he's,
yeah,
like, coming at the end, and but and to Brian's point about being predictable, it's like their first efforts are not going to work.
Right.
Like it has to be him coming in the plane, and that's what's going to be the thing. But just how we got there, still, I was invested in it, and I think it's due to how the script was written, but also just to the actors and how you're just rooting for everybody. Honestly, especially because it's just this little community just trying to survive after horrific things have happened, and you're just wanting them to survive all of this random chaos that they didn't ask for. Brian took one of my lines that I wanted to say, "My war isn't over yet." I Absolutely loved that line in the movie because it's just such a good line about like not only fighting your internal battles but also like redefining your purpose, and like we have already said, but I'll just restate like the duality of like I'm sacrificing myself, you know, so that others can live. Also, I'm fighting because I have something to live for. I just love that back and forth throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
And last thing that I'll say is the scientist with the McDreamy coiffed, Zaddy. That man was beautiful. Absolutely was like, I am on your side. Absolutely. What do you need from me to do? Everybody shut up and listen to this man. He's trying to help you guys. And and I thought it was a good you know, melodrama, like we said, but also like little comedy bits, and you know, the guys just kind of coming together and having their moment of like humor in the midst of all of this stuff. So I just thought it was a very well made movie. Do I want to go back and watch all 36 of the Godzillas? Maybe not, because I feel like I'll be disappointed.
Yes, no, I think you'll be very disappointed.
I did hear the last one
Yeah,
is supposed to be really good.
Shin Godzilla.
Okay. Yeah,
it's similar to this, I think, in terms of like focusing on like the human story kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's what's needed. I mean, sometimes you need a monster just kind of wreaking havoc, and that's like what the movie is about. But when you've had so many Godzillas, it's like, how can you redefine this? How can you make it better? How can you make it more entertaining? And I think that this movie, without having seen any of the other ones, but it feels like this movie has established something new within the chain that is really nice. And like I said before, I did not know that that was the theme music for for Godzilla, because all I know that is from this rap song called Simon Says, because it samples it like right off the top. That is literally, because I was hearing it and I was like, wait, that's where this came from? Oh, fantastic. Okay.
That's so funny. Wait, have you seen any? So there's like the American ones and then like most of the non-American ones. And they all have like different eras of them, which in looking at them, a lot of them are fighting. It's Godzilla versus like another kaiju. Mm-hmm. And so it's like him versus like Mothra or all of these other ones that like I've never heard of before, but or like King Kong versus Godzilla. Yes, which I think also they did a recent one. Wasn't that there was?
That was like just a couple of years back, right?
Yeah, that's the chain over here where it's like Kong Skull Island, Godzilla King of Monsters, like all
the one where Jack Black starred in. That one?
No, that's a different.
That's King Kong.
That's different. Yeah.
Okay.
But then there was the TV show Monarch, so like they're building a whole different thing.
But there is 1962 a King Kong versus Godzilla, just so you know.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I watched a clip of Mothra versus Godzilla, and that I don't think I can sit through a whole
totally.
Movie,
Yeah.
I was just
But
trying
did
to
anyone
see
watch the 1998 with Matthew Broderick?
Yes, I've seen that many times.
I don't think I've watched that.
You don't worry about that one.
All right, cool. If we had to choose like a monster, I think I've watched more King Kong. I know I've watched more King Kong movies than Godzilla, but yeah. All right. Any lasting words or phrases for likes and gripes?
No, this was great.
Yes.
We liked. We didn't.
We
really
all liked. All right, let's move on to our next segment. Brains. Tasty.
Yum yum.
We've brought this up, but I just want to hear your open-ended thoughts, Jamie, on how you felt about the depiction of PTSD in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was really interesting because I think I had mentioned like obviously we're centering around like a protagonist, but also we get glimpses into other people's lives who have similarly lived through experiences of trauma and might be responding in different ways. And so I think like it really highlights that like trauma doesn't have just one particular way of like responding to it. Like it's a huge spectrum of like whether we are isolating ourselves or whether we are avoiding certain triggers or experiencing nightmares and flashbacks. You know, like all of these things I think are like encompassing of trauma, and I think that we do get like a very grounded, down to earth representation of the impact that trauma has, and even more specifically, I would say the impact of survivor's guilt.
Yeah, that's great. No, I thought that it was also really nice to see those different kinds of depictions and not it be kind of like the tropey movie of like we're just going to have a whole bunch of nightmares, you know, which I think is what we see a lot when it's more encompassing than just like this one thing that it can be. Yeah.
I mean, also because like I think that in horror in particular, using trauma as a device, nightmares are probably a really easy thing to do because of jump scares. And so it's like, oh, you could
totally
use nightmares because that can get us a bunch of jump scares. And it's like, all right, like there's more to PTSD than simply jump scaring us constantly in our sleep.
Right. Exactly. Totally agree. Well, speaking on just PTSD, specifically for veterans, are there any government funded facilities that veterans can go to for like mental health support? Is that out there available?
Yeah, I mean, yes. Yes.
However.
Yes, they exist.
So, I mean, I can't speak internationally, but at least within the United States, the U.S. has an entire department called the Department of Veterans Affairs. And this is like part of the federal government around providing healthcare services to military veterans. It also includes like family members, and I think there's other non-healthcare related services, like help with like disability and like help with like finding employment, education, financial support, things like that. The health piece is also inclusive of mental health. That being said, I have no experience with Veterans Affairs. However, I have heard anecdotally not the most promising of things.
Oh, that's so disappointing.
Yeah, which like I think that there is like a significant amount of funding in Veterans Affairs, so it is extra disappointing where it's like, how can we continue to support, like how can the government continue to support like a group of people who like have served its country, and like as a result potentially of serving its country has now experienced a whole bunch of trauma, and like how do we support like them navigating managing that trauma while also like reintegrating them, like it's like similar of like, you know, I'm not comparing like veterans to having been incarcerated, but I do think that there is like a something around like how do you reintegrate into society when you've experienced this like really intense trauma and this very niche specific experience that you're carrying, which I also imagine is like deeply isolating. And so it's like, you know, when you don't feel like you are connecting with other people because like you're carrying this experience with you, I imagine that requires a significant amount of support. And so then to like not really feel like you're being supported effectively, like it's just that's just really awful. And so like I said, I can't speak specifically to like what the quality of these services are,
but there are services
that like are dedicated to supporting veterans specifically with PTSD. Like that's I think that's like the highest like thing that folks would be seeking under those circumstances. And so I think that like we should figure out how we're more effectively supporting our veterans who have experienced significant trauma.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed.
Yeah. That's also why there's a lot of research into like trauma approaches
Oh.
with veterans, because I think again there's like so much funding for veterans that
Mm-hmm.
more studies that we hear about like trauma, like EMDR, like eye movement desensitization and reprocessing,
Yeah.
that mouthful, like studies around the efficacy of that with trauma. Really, most, if not all, of like trauma based approaches. I think there's so much research that is like very heavily surrounding veterans and PTSD because there's a lot of funding there. So like
Yeah.
this is great that we're able to like find effective approaches that work really well with trauma through
Mm-hmm.
that. But again, hopefully folks are actually getting the support that they need.
Yeah. And just to like piggyback off of trauma and finding different ways with that. I mean, I'm sure this is like, yes, like a yes answer, but the goal is never to like get get rid of all the trauma, because you really can't get rid of all the trauma. Like the goal is to be able to live with it and navigate it in a sense. So like, what are we doing? What are different ways that we can use these tools in order to help people deal with their trauma in the way of not like completely erasing it or negating it, but like living with it and being able to continue on and move forward. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like, there's a lot of like mental health diagnoses that are not like that don't necessarily have a concrete like resolution.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that like like with anxiety and depression, like there are strategies that you can learn and apply that like help you better cope with the impact of those symptoms.
Yeah.
I think that like there might be situations where those symptoms come back and like they're really strong, and then other situations where like you're feeling like they're better managed and it's not impacting your ability to like function on a regular basis as often. So
Right.
I think about that in terms of realistic goals in managing trauma.
Mm-hmm.
We can't undo the past. We can't undo the things that have happened to us, but we can like learn how to move forward and reduce the present impact that it's continuing to have on us currently.
Yeah. Fantastic. I think that's something that everyone always needs kind of the reminder of. It's like these tools or these professionals are not there to eliminate, any of these mental illnesses, but to help you be able to deal with them and continue to function and to continue to move forward. So
Hmm.
yeah, thank you for that. Last question. So the pilot and the woman, they both experience loss, but Noriko seems to be able to cope with it in a way of like clinging to more family, and the pilot not so much. He's a little bit, like you said, isolated from it. So I just wanted to ask, why do you think some people might cling more towards others when they experience loss, and then others tend to kind of isolate themselves when they experience loss?
Yeah. I mean, again, I think that like the wide range of like emotional responses is just indicative of like the human experience, that like there is
Hmm.
not one single way to like react or respond, especially
Hmm.
to like more complex traumatic crisis situations. um I think like on one hand you have a character that we get like a little bit more insight into, where they are already they're already kind of like skirting a duty because they feel really scared about it, and
Hmm.
then like doesn't take an action that leads to death. So it's like that happens like twice, and so like feeling this like huge sense of responsibility, and so like as a result then isolating themselves, because if they aren't connected to anybody then they aren't hurting anybody,
Yeah.
like you can
Hmm.
read it that way. um and then on the flip side you have someone who like has now all of a sudden unexpectedly become like a parent figure and maybe doesn't have the luxury of being able to like, I mean, I guess she could, but like, I think it's more challenging for her, and not because of like a gendered thing, but more
Yeah.
so because of the circumstances of like she's saving this little girl, this child, this baby, and like is taking that really seriously also in the loss of like her grief experience. And I think like potentially maybe through like that connection is part of what allows her to like not be as closed off, like because she has to be like it's very much this conversation of like this person's relying on you,
Right.
and I think that's really interesting. I'm not saying that's like 100% of the time, because there's other people who like are parent figures and don't care,
Right.
so
Yes.
it definitely depends, but at least in terms of like this portrayal, I find it like really interesting that like that's my perception of like she doesn't really have like, there just isn't the capacity to like fully disengage from everything, because
Yes.
there is somebody who is depending on her and like literally needs her to survive, and so like that's where she's at, and he's kind of like, these people just showed up and I guess like they live here now.
Right. But she's also trying to like get him to have that same mindset of like, you have people now, so like this is what you're living for, these people. Yeah.
But you can tell that he's like, he doesn't fully allow himself to, because he's still really shutting that down like internally, and it's just like doing what he needs to do. Like even you see it too, like he takes a job and he's getting comfortable, and there's like that really, again, like that montage of all of them like having fun together and like disarming the bombs, but then later when Godzilla is about to appear for the second time, he finally reveals that he was a kamikaze pilot. And like there's this brief moment of like, is he being judged for revealing this information because of like, again, he did not fulfill his like duty, his obligation, and are they now perceiving him some type of way? And like even that information is, I feel like that's the, like, yes, there's the Godzilla piece, but like that's the big information. That's the thing that he feels the worst about, because that's what essentially I think what they're implying is contributed to his parents' death and the destruction. Like that's the bombing of Tokyo, like in the very beginning of the movie. So I think that's like the bigger reveal. And then again, obviously, because it's a metaphor. What?
Yes.
Shocking. So anyway, long story short, I think that there is no like one single way to respond to things. I do think that avoidance is a really common like symptom of trauma, and like potentially being around other people. How does that like exacerbate survivor's guilt? Being around other people who like experience that loss, it's like, oh, I contributed to this, like I'm part of the problem. Is that like also kind of furthering his sense of like needing to isolate from other people? Also connecting with people is a risk, because what if he lets them down again? What if he disappoints them? So it's like all of that. I think that could be playing into like his distancing and like isolating himself.
That makes sense. Great. Well, thank you. That's all that I have for brains. Should we Rotten Tomato this?
Yes. Now that we figure out who the zaddy of the film is, we should figure out what the score of the.
I'm just saying.
It's the Rotten Tomatoes game.
Okay, what do you think this has on Rotten Tomatoes? Nikisha, why don't you go first?
I'm going to go high. I'm going to say 96.
All right, Jamie?
Yeah, I'm going to say 97.
All right, this movie's audience score and critic score is the same.
What? Damn.
It has a 98%.
Wow!
Yay! That's great.
Does that ever happen? How often does that happen?
Not regularly. Definitely not regularly.
That's wild.
The critics' consensus is, with engaging human stories anchoring the action, Godzilla Minus One is one kaiju movie that remains truly compelling between the scenes of mass destruction.
Yeah.
And then the audience says, an instant classic addition to the franchise, Godzilla Minus One has terrific special effects and a really entertaining story to match. So same thing said differently.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's figure out what this has on Letterboxd. Jamie, why don't you go first?
I'm gonna say a 4.1.
All right, Nikisha.
You stole my number.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. 4.3.
4.1.
Oh,
Dang. I'm sorry I stole it.
it's okay. We both thought of it, so it's the thought
Yeah.
that counts.
So
Absolutely.
here are the 3 most popular reviews. At number 3, I tap the green stars one by one like dorsal ridges charging up.
I'm screaming, but yes.
Number 2, you ever just stop and think about how absolutely hard the Godzilla theme goes?
It does.
It really does. Because I had that one moment where I was like, did his theme come up at all in the beginning? Or did it happen like it was like much later when I like pointed it out? We were like a good chunk into the movie. I couldn't remember.
Oh, I think it came a little early. I don't know. I felt like it came a little early. But
I just remember it hitting really hard and being like, whoa.
yeah.
I don't remember. I remember you pointing it out, but I don't remember if that was the first time we heard it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was like subtle in the beginning, and then it really was like, this is the
Maybe.
theme, like towards the end. Yeah.
And the most popular review, 2 films in 2023 have dared to examine the fallout and social implications of World War II's nuclear exclamation point. One is a hard-hitting social drama chronicling years in the life of a man broken and haunted by his own failure to prevent the darkness and devastation that enveloped the world following the introduction of the atomic bomb and the inadvertent opening of a door to an endless plague of hopelessness and destruction set upon future generations. A film which truly encapsulates the sheer power, abject terror, and subsequent futility that humankind was forced to face in the wake of its own unimaginable creation. A story told through the eyes of a determined engineers, scientists, and soldiers gathered in the name of national pride to nobly save their culture and civilization as they knew it from the raw, monstrous horrors to which they had borne witness, and an ambiguous resolution to the inevitable humanist clash between blind optimism and bleak reality. And the other one is Oppenheimer.
I knew it.
I knew it.
I knew it.
Personally, I prefer the one with the giant fire-breathing sea lizard that eats battleships and levels cities.
Yay.
Yep.
All right.
Agreed.
Should we do the 4 S's?
Yes.
Yes.
Skull, scare, shakes, and suggestions. The Talking Horrors 4 S's.
All right, the 4 S's are skulls, scares, shakes, and suggestions. With skulls, we are going to rate 1 through 10 how well this handled mental health and human behavior. Scares is how scary was this, and shakes is how much you're going to shake this off, or this is a one and done. And then we'll get into our suggestions. Jamie, why don't you start with your numbers?
Surely. For skulls, I actually went really high. I gave it a 9.
Ay.
Whoa!
Fun
I
times.
know. This just really, it just felt like one of the most realistic depictions of people ever
Yeah.
in a movie that we've seen. And like even more
That's
so
fair.
highlighting trauma. So like you go Godzilla -1.
You go, Glen Coco, Godzilla.
For scares, I gave this a 4.5. I think like they do a really good job at like introducing dread and like just really brutal violent scenes in like a grand scale. Like the very beginning, I think it's more intimate and super disturbing, but like Brian said, really sets the tone for like, oh, when this fucker comes back, it's not going to be good.
No.
And it's not, and like seeing the devastation on a grander scale, I find very disturbing. I also get really scared by really big things. This is like a weird thing.
Okay.
In addition to the big mouths, I get scared by feeling really small, like tiny size wise.
I got a TikTok about that today. Interesting.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it's called something.
Yeah, there's like a phobia. Like everything has a phobia. Is it like thalassophobia or something? I forget what that one is.
It's megalophobia.
Oh, that one makes more sense. Oh, thalassophobia is the fear of deep water.
Which
the fear of large objects is megalophobia.
Yeah, so I get that. Like when I used to like zoom out on Google Earth and be like, oh my God, I'm just like a small speck on this little ball, and there's so many other bigger balls around us, and it would really send me into a spiral. So if that's any indication of what my mental health is like, now you know. So yeah, just like seeing this like giant monster just like truly wreak havoc in this huge city was like very disturbing to me. For Shakes, I'm giving this a 7. Only because, like I mentioned in the beginning, I did fall asleep a teensy bit, and I want to rewatch it, and I think it would have an even greater impact on me. But this was just like a really excellent movie. And again, I think like horror adjacent enough, but just really, I think everyone should watch it for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
Nikisha?
Yeah, mine is similar. Skulls, I gave a 7. Scares, I gave a 4. And Shakes, I gave a 6. Mostly just because, like I said, I'm not like a monster horror person, but this was a fantastic movie, and I really did enjoy my time watching it.
Yeah. I gave this a 9 for Skulls. I gave this a 5 for Scares, and I gave this a 9 for Shakes. Like, I'm genuinely excited but I also, I love monster movies. Right. I love this kind of thing. I love disaster movies like Poseidon Adventure and Independence Day and stuff like that. So this like checked every box like for me. I'm really excited to watch the black and white version. And this will forever be on my list of like best, like disaster movies, like monster movies and stuff like that. And my suggestion is Bong Joon-ho's The Host, the South Korean monster movie that has a lot of emotional family beats amongst, the monster stuff. I would highly suggest that to those who have not seen it. Jamie, why don't you go next?
Sure. I have 2. One I feel like I gave recently for something else, and I can't remember why now, but I'll never not recommend Cloverfield I think because of did I say that for
A Quiet Place?
Yeah. Well, too bad, so sad. I'm saying it again. I love Cloverfield. And I think it gives a very similar vibe of another kaiju attacking a city and more like human emotional beats and things like that. The other one that I'm going to suggest is also about creatures attacking, some dinosaur-like creatures attacking Jurassic Park.
Heard of
you
it.
stole mine again, Jamie.
Oh no! I mean, I take it back. I only said Cloverfield.
No.
I said nothing else. Goodbye. I'm gonna hide.
I literally was like, what monster horror movie do I love? And it's definitely Jurassic Park, like the OG 90s. I definitely bought like the DVD pack of the first 3 Jurassic Parks. Like, it's my jam.
It's so good when see the water jiggle, when you see the jello, the jello jiggle.
The jello jiggle.
Well, it was hard not to watch this movie, and every time you hear the thunder of like the foot hitting, like it's hard not to think of the water in the car or the jello, like you mentioned. Like it's hard not to.
Yeah.
Yes.
Also, I'm gonna suggest Pacific Rim for anybody who.
Oh
I never saw
yeah.
that.
That's like, well, I know you said you're not like super big on like monster movie stuff,
Mhm.
but it is like a whole kaiju like centered story. But by Guillermo del Toro, and it's really fun.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Is Train to Busan, is that a creature movie too,
This
or
is,
no?
this is a zombie movie.
I
Oh.
honestly I was thinking about that as a possible like recommendation. Just like again seeing another like devastation on a city with more human focused beats. I that was a thought that went through my brain.
Yeah. But you're like, zombies? No, we're talking about monsters here.
I'm sorry.
Dinosaurs. Fantastic. Okay, well, I guess that wraps up our episode of Godzilla Minus One. You can follow us on all the social medias, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, at Talk Horror Pod. And producer Brian, where can they listen to us?
You can listen to us wherever you get podcasts. That's right. YouTube. Hi, YouTube. Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Rate and review us there. 5 stars, please.
And thank you.
Thank you. Woohoo.
What should we leave it with? We should leave it with the bomb ass theme song.
Oh, or can your war be over now? Or whatever she says.
Oh,
Which was so
yeah.
sweet.
Wait, can we just all stomp around like we are Godzilla?
I'm trying to make the screen shake. I'll do this.
Oh no! Oh, something I also like. I like that they had the like showing that she like got some of the Godzilla regeneration cells on her neck at the end, because I feel like that justified how she could come back and like be that okay, and that was like okay, I believe that like that that even felt, even though it was grounded in a sci-fi like creation, like it at least it justified it, if that makes sense.
Right. It gave a reason for it, not just like, we
Yeah.
just want this to be a happy ending. Here's Noriko again.
Right.
Yeah.
But also, roar. Oh no! Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.